we'll get the show on the road then. Welcome everybody to our little webinar. A very exciting day. I'm Brian and I work with FACE, which is Farming and Countryside Education. Got my t-shirt on today, I don't know if you can see it. I've only got one, but there you go. And I'm delighted that we've got Henry here, Henry Lucas, who is a farmer, a genuine live farmer with us here in our little studio area. And we're going to do this webinar in conjunction with the National Farmers Union, the NFU, and we're going to be thinking a little bit about our food and where our food comes from. So, Henry, have you had your breakfast today?
I have indeed, yes.
Yeah.
I had porridge for breakfast.
Porridge for breakfast today, and I had some, I don't know if I can mention the name, I had Weetabix today with some nice British strawberries on it. So they were absolutely delicious. So I hope you've all had some breakfast, and that'll set you up for the day, really. We're going to have a little look at a particular meal today, and you should be able to see that slide there. Where does your beef burger come from? So you can see some of the components there already that go into a beef burger. There's in some beef coming from that cow, eventually, that cattle, and a sack of wheat down there on the left. So those are some of the things, but we'll talk about that in a little while. And we're going to try and think about not just how good some of this food can be for you, but also about how it's produced, how it's grown, and how it's reared. So you don't really grow cows, you don't sort of plant them in the ground, you actually do rear them. So you sort of help them to grow up, really, look after them. Now, at FACE, we try and have a bit of fun sometimes. So we've had a comedian, Bill Bailey, make a little film. He went down onto a farm to see what went on there, and he took some children from London. And I don't know if any of you are watching from that area of the country, but he took some school children from London down onto a farm to see if he could find out a bit more about where food comes from. So we'll show you that film just now. So enjoy.
Isn't it a shame these days that kids don't know where their food comes from? In fact, almost a third of kids in England don't know what bacon's made of. Old MacDonald had a farm. And on that farm he had a... Morning, class.
Good morning.
My name is Bill.
Here, there, everywhere.
Old MacDonald had a farm. Now, can anyone tell me, where does a horse come from? A horse comes from an egg. And if you were to sit on that all day long, at the end of the day, it'll hatch out into a pony. Right. Here, there, everywhere.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Right, well, you bought that one for strawberry, that one for chocolate, and that one for vanilla. Oh, hang on. No, that's chicken soup. That one's vanilla. Those pigs over there, they're not real. Now, you've broken it. Broccoli comes from a pig. Now, it looks like it's trumped it out, but actually, no. It's come from a secret compartment at the back of the pig. It's so secret, look, the pig doesn't even know. The pig's thinking, what's that? Where that? There, and everywhere. At FACE, we're helping kids reconnect with farming and agriculture. Find out how you can get involved at www.face-online.org.uk. I know where my food comes from. Do you?
I wonder how much you like those children in the film and how much you could be confused about where food comes from and whether bacon does grow on trees and things like that. So I hope you're sort of getting to grips with where food comes from. There's a lot of farming goes on in the UK, and we've got a little bit of a poll question coming up here for you now. So a little poll for you to have a little go at. We've got some fractions there, so I hope that's not too scary on a morning. You might have already done a bit of maths early on. And it's really to think about how much of our countryside is set over to be farmland. Sometimes if we live in a town or city, like most of us do, we don't really realise how much farmland's there. So our poll question is, approximately how much of Britain's land area do you think is farmland? And there's a few choices there for you. If you look at the one in the middle, with half shaded in light green, do you think half of Britain is farmland? Or do you want to go a little bit more or a little bit less? You could go, it's going to the left, you could say, well, 2/3 is farmland, or 3/4 is farmland. It's quite a lot. Or if you went to the right from the halfway circle there, the little pie chart, you could think, well, it's only a third, or surely it's only a quarter. So if you want to have a little go at that poll now, see what you think. How much farmland do you think? I don't know, Henry, if you've got any ideas?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
I think I do know, yes.
So I'll give you a few moments to sort of decide what you think as a class. You could go straight down the middle and say a half, or a little bit more, come to the left and maybe vote for 2/3 or 3/4, or if you think we're really pulling your leg and there's hardly any farmland, only a quarter of Britain is farmland, then go for that one over on the right. Okay? Now, if you're right, I shouldn't really say extra playtime or anything like that, but I'm sure your teacher will be delighted if you've got the right answer. I'm going to ask Henry if he thinks he knows what the answer is and to tell us.
I think it's 3/4, Brian.
Okay, so if we go to our next little slide, we'll see our answer then, quarters. And that's a picture, quite a beautiful picture of farmland in the background there. Not only can you see the patchwork of fields, some of them in light green, which might be grass growing or could be crops, wheat and barley, things like that, but you've also got that strings of hedgerow stretching all over the countryside, and we've got an awful lot of hedgerow. In fact, we've got so much it would go to the moon and back. That's how much hedgerow farmers look after in our countryside. It's about 500,000 miles of hedgerow. So as well as producing our food, farmers are great at managing, looking after the countryside. Right, so well done if you got the answer to that, 3/4. We'll go back now and have a little look at that beef burger meal that we had there. So I don't know if that's one of your favourite meals. It's certainly something I enjoy from time to time. And a lot of people say, oh, you know, they talk about junk food a lot. You hear this said, but you know, all foods in the right quantity can be fine and part of a balanced diet. And on that slide, you've got the Eat Well plate at the top left there. I'll try and drop a little arrow on this to show you. My little green arrow there. So that little plate there that's pointing at there, that's the Eat Well plate, which shows you the proportions of things you should have. And if you go down to the meal itself, the burger meal, you can see there's lots of the things that come out of that Eat Well plate in there. So you've got some nice lean mince, which makes up the burger, great protein source. You might want to sprinkle a bit of cheese on that, again, which is a dairy product. And of course, very important to make sure you have some of the hiding around here, some salad, fruit and veg, very important part of your diet as well. Now then, I wonder if there's anything on that plate I've forgotten to mention. Henry, did you notice the product I didn't mention, part of the meal?
The bread, Brian, I think, is that right?
It is the bread. I forgot to mention the roll, of course. You've got to have a roll to eat your burger in. So that's really what we're going to focus on a little bit now. Because the roll is made from, I hope you all know, it's made from bread of some sort. And there's a few different varieties of bread. So actually bread's one of the favourite foods in the country. People seem to love it. And there's 12 million loaves or bread equivalent eaten every single day in the UK. So that's an awful lot of loaves to cook and an awful lot of wheat to grow to make it. And in fact, there are 200 sorts of bread that you can get. I wonder how many you can name. I mean, I'm thinking of white bread, of course, and maybe wholemeal bread, which has got most of the grain still in it, so sometimes a little bit viewed as being better for you. French baguette style, or seeded rolls with the seeds on the top. What's your favourite, Henry?
You just mentioned it, Brian. Seeded rolls,
Yeah,
I think, they're very, very tasty.
Yeah, they're pretty nice. I quite like a bagel myself. I don't know if you've heard of those, but they're pretty tasty as well. Maybe with something like jam or chocolate spread on it, even better for me, but as a special treat, of course, not every day. We're going to sort of focus a little bit on the bread now, the bread part of that burger meal, and have a little look at Henry's farm and see where he is. Now, I'm not quite sure where you're watching from today and listening from, but there's a picture there now of Henry next to a map of the United Kingdom. And you can see the little dot on the map is showing where we are, and that's in Warwickshire. So if I put my little pointer on, so Henry's farm is down here in the middle of the country. I imagine looking at where you live, Henry, you don't get to the seaside too often.
Not very often. It's about as far as I can get away from the sea.
It is. It's a long way from the seaside for us to get there. But that's where Henry's farm is, and lots of things go on Henry's farm, including rearing of beef, cattle for meat, and also growing of various crops, grain crops and oil crops. And we're going to be having a little think about that. If we focus on some of the grain growing there, and you can see behind Henry there is a field of what looks suspiciously like a wheat or maybe a barley crop. We can have a little focus on that. So if we look at this slide here, we've got some of the operations that go on in getting your wheat to you. Because of course you can't have your roll or your wholemeal bread, whatever bread you want, until you've got some flour. And you can't have flour until you've grown some grain. And we've got some grain here we might show you in a little while. So if we look at these pictures here, take you round a bit of a farming year, what happens. This first picture up here shows some enormous machine, specialised machinery, sowing some wheat seed. What sort of size would this be, Henry, these sorts of machines?
Yeah, sort of machinery, very big indeed. Much too big for our farm. I think we have about a third of the size of that machine on our farm. Yeah. But they vary from all sorts of sizes. We use something that's 3 metres wide, that's probably about 6. 6
metres, that's a lot. See, if you're going to produce food to feed a nation and even to export and send to other countries to eat, remember what I said about 12 million loaves every day just in this country? So there's some very big farming operations going on and some smaller ones as well. Well, this is the machine that actually sows, and it's nothing to do with a needle and thread. It means plants the seed into the ground. And again, farmers use lots of words like drill, so that you could say it's drilling the seed. It's putting the seed into the ground. So if you've got allotments at home or at school, in your garden, you might well turn the soil over, crush it down, and then plant the seeds yourself. Some things you might grow at home. So before this stage, Henry, of sowing the seed, you might have had to do things like plough, or
yeah, ploughing, cultivations. It's just like digging your allotment and growing vegetables. Really, you've got to bury last year's crop and prepare the ground for this year's.
Yeah. We can see some questions coming through, which is absolutely great. We're picking up on some of these. I'm going to have a little time for some questions and answers in a little while. So thank you for these questions. Some really good ones about how long does that all take, the year, of producing the crop from beginning to end. So this sowing time, if we sort of give you an idea for that, that would be happening in early autumn. So perhaps September?
September, early October is the normal time, depending on the weather.
So if you think of this as a cycle of growing, we're putting wheat into the ground in September. If we move on then to this second picture over here, you can see everything's looking a lot greener. Some hedgerows or woodlands going there, and underneath this tractor that's going along, the wheat has started to grow. So we've got some baby wheat starting to grow. It looks very much like grass at this stage because it is a grass. And we're trying to get this to become healthy and tall, just as if you were growing your plants at home or in school grounds, or maybe if you've got allotments you go to, you'd be eager to see those seeds germinate and start to come up out of the ground. And what you need to do then, if you're going to get a good crop of wheat, is to protect it and make sure that things like weeds don't smother it, make sure that little pests and diseases don't start growing on the leaves. So in this picture you can see the tractor here, it's got some spray coming out of it, so they've got to spray. Most farms would choose to use some sprays maybe to keep the weeds away, and this is done in a very careful way because it's really important to farmers to put the correct dose on. Imagine if you were taking a medicine and you took the wrong dose, it made you quite poorly and it could have bad effects. So farmers are ever so careful about the amount, the dose of chemicals they use, herbicides or fungicides, and also careful that it doesn't get into the wrong environment, getting it into streams or into rivers, because this is there purely to protect the crop. So again, your allotment, on a small scale, you probably don't need to worry too much. You might go and pick caterpillars off by hand. I know I do on my broccoli at home in my little allotment patch. But on a large scale, to produce these vast quantities of food that the nation needs, we do often revert to using some chemicals if and when they're needed. Now the other thing you have to battle with in the spring is the weather. I'm not sure what it's doing where you are today. We've got a pretty sunny day over here in Warwickshire, but it didn't half rain yesterday, and it's always a battle for farmers, isn't it, Henry?
Well, it is. Yeah, the weather is the one unknown we've got to contend with. So we can start the year with everything looking fantastic, and we can end the year with a disaster.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah. And this is where scientists are very important, developing ways that farmers can actually produce crops, develop new strains of crop that will actually withstand wet conditions or dry conditions. So there's a lot of work in science developing the chemical products or developing the varieties of wheat that can cope with the ever-changing weather picture. So if you're into science at all, this is a great job to get involved with the farming community on that. So if we go on to the next picture now, so we're in the spring there, we're protecting that crop, we're watching it grow tall, and hopefully get to this time of year, which would be perhaps in a couple of months' time, would you say, Henry?
If it was wheat, it would be sometime in August, middle of August. If it was barley, it would be a bit earlier in July, end of July.
Yeah. So it just amazes me on this one that the man who drives this machine, the combine harvester, has to drive at the same speed as the one in this tractor here. Otherwise, all of that grain.
Actually, Brian, it's the other way around. Actually, the man in the tractor has to ride the same speed as the combine.
Right. Okay. So this guy has to keep up with this one. If he goes too fast, all of the grain will be dropped on the floor, and it's a total waste of time. So this machine is called, I'm sure you know, the combine harvester, and it's combine because it's actually cutting the wheat and it's also threshing the wheat. It's actually taking out and separating the straw from the grain. The grain obviously is going to go off to the mills, and then the straw can be rolled up, similar to the next picture here, and that will be used for animal bedding. So there's never any waste in agriculture. It's really trying hard to make sure there's a cycle of nutrients, a cycle for all of the crop parts. So straw, very useful, very important in livestock production as well. So that's sort of the year, starting back in that first picture there, when we were in autumn time, and go all the way through the spring there, into harvest time in August, and then that's at the end perhaps of August, September, ready to start back and go back again and start all over again. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. It's perhaps amazing to think how many people are involved in this process, because you think, well, it's just the farmer, but really you've got the people who make the machinery, the engineers, you've got people who develop the protection chemicals that have to be used from time to time. You've also got the people who do the genetics, breeding the new varieties of wheat or other crops. And then when you get to the bakery, you've also got that side of things as well. So we have a little look at that now. A lot of engineering goes on there. So all of that grain, which has been harvested and taken, is stored on the farm usually, or might go off to big grain stores. Then what's going to happen after that is, as the mill needs it, they will deliver the grain to the mill. And here are some pictures of flour mills where the grain is turned into flour. So you've got some happy bakers there in the middle, and you've got some various things going on. I think just to point out here, we've got some, if we just get my little pointer back. There he is. You've got some what looks like massive bags of flour. So if it's not going to go to it might go to the mill. They might even bag it up and send it to the supermarkets as well for you to buy and turn into your pizza bases and biscuits or whatever you're going to cook at home. At the mill here, we've got some ovens at the back here and some incredible bits of piping that, to be honest, I'm not sure what they are. I imagine they're using a vast amount of water, clean water, to make bread. So again, it's got to be kept. It's quite a sort of factory process, and lots of engineering goes into this. Absolutely brilliant. So that's in the mill. Now we've got some flour to show you here, if I can find it. Have a look. So here's some I bought earlier, and you'll see, just like in the background there, this is some plain flour. It's got a Union Jack on it. And quite often you'll see on British produced things this sign here, which is meant to look like a tractor. and this is the red tractor logo. So if you look out for this sort of logo, you'll know that your flour that you're buying has been produced on a British farm, and that's meant to give an assurance about that things have been done properly, like going back to the way the grain is stored, the way it's produced. If it's on an animal product like beef, it'd be that the animals are being cared for properly and things like that. So it's to make sure when you buy it, you can feel assured that people have done a good job with it. They haven't done anything a bit strange and maybe done something which could either hurt you or be harmful to the environment. So look out for that when you're buying it. But it's on all sorts of products. It's got it on flour here with the Union Jack there. But if I go to the back here, you'll find it on things like your breakfast cereals. So there's a little tiny one down here. I can get up to the camera. There we go. Just very tiny down here. I don't know if you can pick that up even, but that's a little red tractor there. But it's even on things like your dairy produce as well. So here's a little tub of cream, and when I search for it, there's a little tractor down there. I think you're not going to just about see that. There we go, right at the bottom there. So look out for those. Okay, so lots of people involved, lots of different sorts of work, lots of science, engineering and logistics. That means getting things from one place to another. I think it's about time though, Henry, we had a look down on your farm though and see exactly what goes on the farm to see these things. So we've got a little film coming up now, which you can enjoy, which is a bit of a farm tour. I mean, if you could all get to the Midlands and get to Warwickshire, we could show you around, but this is the next best thing. So we took a bit of a film crew out and we'll have a little look at the farm that Henry works at. So enjoy.
Hello everybody, my name's Henry. Welcome to my wonderful part of Warwickshire. Come and see what we do. Are you coming? Hey, I'm here! This is one of our fields of barley. And this, when it's golden yellow, will be ready for harvest. Now, barley is a food for you and for our animals, and it's malted. So malted milk biscuits, anything with malt in its name, lemon barley water for instance, and even beer. Not only do we farm food for you and I, but we farm for food for the wildlife. This hedge, for instance, is ideal for insects, the flowers, berries for the birds in the winter. It's a corridor for the mammals, and it helps protect the fields. Oh, there you are. This is one of our fields of oilseed rape, and these little flowers need bees and insects to pollinate them. And when they're ripe, these pods will be crushed for oil and used for cooking, and what's left over will be good for animal feed. These are our cattle, and they eat our grass. They're outside in the summer, and in the winter they eat what is known as silage, which is pickled grass. These animals are about 15 months old. They come on the farm at 3 months and they leave at about 21 months, and then they will become your beef burger, your mince, your steak and your roasting joint, which goes very nicely with roast potatoes and Yorkshire pudding. Right, we've got more to see. Come on. This is our wheat, and wheat is made into flour and can be used for lots of things. For bread, for biscuits, for thickening sauces. It's in all sorts of foods. Now, this field is 10 hectares in size, and if it was made into bread, you get around about 200,000 loaves out of this field. Enormous, isn't it? Well, that's the end of the tour. Thank you for keeping up with me. I'm glad you came for the visit.
Well, amazing. I couldn't really believe that, Henry. 200,000 loaves from that 10-hectare field.
That's staggering, isn't it?
It's amazing to think that. Now, we were thinking, you know, how many sorts of food did you actually spot that are grown on Henry's farm? What sort of foods are there, Henry?
Well, there are an amazing number of foods, really, because the crops we grow and the animals we rear can be made into lots of different foods. We're also growing food for wildlife as well. The farm is just an enormous food production source.
Yeah. I mean, some people say it's like a massive place where food is produced, but it's also like a big nature reserve as well, and you're trying to keep those two things working happily together. So it's great to see those, you know, hedgerows and lots of what we call margins on the edges of fields where wildlife can benefit whilst we're actually producing our crops. Now, it's great, we've had loads of questions coming in, so we're going to try and tackle a few of these now, Henry, for you, and see, we've got them grouped out here. But one of the most important questions, I suppose, from Henry's point of view is, do you enjoy your job?
Well, the first answer is yes, I do, but some days a lot more than others. A nice sunny day as today, fantastic job. Yeah. When it's pouring rain, it's freezing cold, not quite so keen.
I mean, some of the children have suggested you must have fun driving a plough.
Driving a tractor with a plough on the back. Yes, sometimes. I don't want to do it every day of the year.
No. It's like anything, isn't it? It sounds great, but if you do it every day, it can sometimes become a bit dull. But I'm sure it sounds dead exciting to you driving a tractor out there. I sort of quite enjoy it, but I don't get to do it very often.
I don't think that it's the variety that's the key to enjoying the job.
Yeah, lots of different elements to working with it. I mean, there's a question here, why did you want to be a farmer in the first place? Is that something
I don't know. I grew up, I've grown up on a farm. I've always worked on a farm. It's just something I wanted to do, I suppose. You just don't think about it very hard.
Yeah. And I think it's just marvellous being working in the countryside. It's just a lovely place to be. You know, it's not always bright and sunny. The bad weather at times, you wish you were doing something else on those days when you have to work despite the weather, and that can make it difficult with production of food when the weather's really bad.
I have to be outside, I think. That's the key.
Yeah. I mean, people ask how many different animals you've got as well, because animals are great. I'm sure lots of us have pets at home, but I mean, I know the farm animals are not your pets, but how many different sorts of animals do you have there?
We've got cattle, we've got some chickens, we've got a few horses. My son's got a dog. I think that's about it.
Yeah. So you've got some pets as well as the farm animals, yeah. And another question, really importantly, because things have changed so much over the years, is how many people actually work on your farm?
Well, actually, day to day, one or one and a half. My son does most of the farming these days. I help him out when he needs help, and we hire in big machines when we do the sort of important jobs like harvesting and
right. So that means you don't actually own all of the different machines, a plough, a combine harvester.
No.
Farmers work, and there are people who are not farmers, but they're called contractors who you might use to do some of the jobs. Those specialised machines would cost maybe a lot of money. So sharing jobs, working together, gets the job done, really.
Yes, that's so.
Now, there's some more questions here, a few coming in about knowing about where your food goes to. So the food that you produce, Henry, whereabouts, do you know where some of that goes?
Yeah, well, all our beef cattle go to Waitrose, supermarket, they all go there. Our oilseed rape and our wheat go, basically depends on the quality, and that's all dependent on the year. So it depends on the quality of the product as to where it can go. But it all goes to somewhere in this country is produced either into biscuits, because we grow biscuit wheat mainly, or if it's not good enough for that, it will go to animal feed.
Yeah, so again, it very much depends, a bit like when you grow things at school or at home, sometimes something grows particularly well, sometimes it maybe doesn't grow quite so good. So hopefully it'll be biscuit wheat, but if it doesn't make the grade for that, it could always be eaten by animals who could be reared on for some beef or meat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's
or milk for cows.
Yeah, so not wasted. And so in the film about the oilseed rape, that you take the oil out and then what's crushed, what is left, is fed to animals.
Yes.
So it's a good system. Now, there's another question here about do you deliver foods to the shops or do lorries come to you?
our low lorries come to me. We send it off in big lorry loads, and then it's processed into something that people can eat, and then delivered to the shops.
So there you go, another part of the food chain there. People coming to collect it, all the lorry drivers to take. I mentioned earlier logistics about moving food produce around the country as well. I think you've got enough jobs to do without having to actually deliver all your food.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. And a few more questions here, in a slightly different, about the harvest again. So we've just mentioned that again, the harvest time from when?
From sort of late July till hopefully end of August is probably, if we can get the weather right. Our harvest, the man that comes in to do our combining probably takes about 6 days.
Right, okay, 6 days to do all of that, and we are sort of at this time of year hoping for some really good weather now, some sunshine to fill the grains up. Lots of photosynthesis going on. Some of you might know that term, but basically the leaves will make lots of food in the leaf, and that food will help the grains to swell nice and big, and then we get some nice dry weather for harvesting in August, hopefully. And it's a great time to visit this time of year, isn't it, the countryside?
Yes.
Right, maybe time for a couple more questions. I've just got a few more arriving here. We saw some bees in the film there, Henry. One of my favourite little invertebrate animals. Do you produce honey as well? It's made people think.
I don't actually produce honey. I've got somebody that keeps bees on the farm, but we have the bees there to pollinate crops like the oilseed rape. And we also grow clovers in our grasses, which actually help the bees as well. Okay,
so again, really important to look after all those little invertebrates, because some of them are very useful to the farmer, like the bees, for pollinating the crops as well. And maybe if we can finish with one last question that had so many too, so thank you for sending so many questions. Try and answer a little variety of them. Just asking, going back to the grain, what would be the best conditions if the children wanted to try growing a little pot of wheat, or for you as a farmer, what would be the ideal conditions? Lovely and dry all the time?
No, not all the time. You need moisture. You need moisture on and off, and you need it reasonably warm but not too hot.
So, and again,
typical British climate, then.
Yeah, in fact, it's a great country for growing cereal crops. Well, I think we're sort of about. I think I've got no more questions that I can. Okay, yeah, just to mention, I've just got a note passed to me to mention that if you did have trouble seeing the video, it will be available online. So if you visit the NFU YouTube channel, you should be able to see that video again. So if you had some trouble seeing the video of Henry's farm, do pop to the NFU YouTube channel and you can watch that again at your leisure. And, why wouldn't you want to watch it? It's great fun to watch. And the next best thing to visiting Warwickshire, really, and visiting Henry's farm. Well, we're sort of about just coming towards the end, so it's been absolutely great to be able to chat about farming, where your food comes from, think about, how those can be part of a really healthy diet. We're going to sort of finish with a little film again now. Again, thank you for all of your questions. I'm sure you've still got lots more. You can visit the FACE website, try and find out all the things that you can about food and farming, because it's an absolutely great industry to be involved with. Fun to learn, it's so exciting. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We have got a little film to watch before we log off. We'll see how well you can see this one. This film again shows lots of different sorts of foods produced on British farms. So we'll run that film now, and I guess all we can say is from me it's goodbye, and from Henry,
goodbye.
And maybe see you on a farm sometime. Okay, bye.
Hi.
I'd just like to say
thank you!
Thank you!
Thank you! Thank you!
Thank you.
Thank you!
Thank you!
For buying my sugar.
For buying my celery.
For buying my beef.
Our plants!
My fruit.
My chickens. My pak choy.
My sprouts.
My energy.
Our milk.
My pork.
Our apples.
My cereals.
My lamb.
My potatoes.
Our hops.
And above all,
thank you!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you!